everyone, welcome back. This is a video that I was actually meaning to make this past weekend when I was down in Fernie for the rental bike series. However, we are in the less scenic setting of my living room slash studio because I want to get it out to you nonetheless. And I'm really quite excited, and I think that this may be helpful for some people considering these items. So what are we talking about? Well, Black Diamond has really done a great job at redesigning their headlamps. I've been using Black Diamond headlamps for probably, gosh, 10, 15 years. It's long enough. And one of the things that always kind of plagued, in my opinion, the Black Diamond headlamp lineup is that if you wanted a brighter headlamp, you had to get a lot of features, often which were features that might appreciate to some demographics and not to others. For instance, my previous Storm, I wanted the brightest headlamp that they had for canoeing, so that if I got caught at dark, I could have better visibility of the shoreline looking for a camping spot. However, that also meant that I had to have a full RGB. So red, great for people who are doing camping to preserve your night vision, but the green and the blue, to the best of my understanding, really only appealed to hunters who were using those color spectrums to track, animals that they had injured. And so it made for a much more complicated headlamp in terms of cycling from one feature to another. Now, they have simplified things. They effectively have two different parallel lines. They have the standard line and they have an R line. R standing for rechargeable. And so we'll start actually right here. So this is the Spot 400R, Spot R. It is a 400 lumen headlamp. It's the second brightest one they make, and I'll explain why in a second. The spots and the headlamps below it, so the 400, 350, 300, are all effectively using the same shell casing, which means they're all effectively the same weight, with a slight exception to this one. So the lower tier models are, I believe, 76 grams, and this one weighs in at 73 grams. So despite being brighter and having a few more features, it's lighter weight by 3 grams. You'll never notice that, but I just thought that was interesting to point out. What you do get, though, is a headlamp series that increases at very even increments, and it also increases at very predictable lumen or brightness levels. And with that, you also get some extra features. So the basic one, I believe, is just a standard spot. Then you get a red light, then you get a white flood. There is one model, I believe it's a 500, that sits above this. It uses a much larger housing. It is brighter, but it comes with that sort of weight and size trade-off. I went for the Spot 400R. Why? Because when I'm in the backcountry, I'm bringing a lot of electronics with me to do the filming for you folks, which means I always have a battery bank. So for me, I always have access to a lot more stored energy in a battery bank that I can then simply direct directly into the headlamp, as opposed to needing to carry additional AAA batteries, which is what I was previously doing. In fact, I was previously carrying AAA spare batteries in addition to that battery bank. So in my overall setup, I've now been able to eliminate those batteries. And I think a lot of people are bringing, phones to film and take videos and photos with as well, and they might be bringing battery banks. So if that's you, then I would certainly encourage you to look at the R, the rechargeable series of headlamps from Black Diamond. One thing to note, and in my opinion, they lose a big point for this, they use USB micro instead of USB-C. I don't know why. It's 2022. So far as I'm concerned, everything should be USB-C. Am I super upset about it? No, because the original Garmin InReach Mini, the InReach that I have, it is also USB micro. And so I'm already carrying with me an adapter to charge that. If the day ever comes that I upgrade to the new Garmin InReach Mini with USB-C, hopefully then Black Diamond will have made that subtle update to these headlamps. It's also worth knowing, before in the past when Black Diamond has done a rechargeable headlamp, what it really meant was that it had a built-in rechargeable system, but I believe it still had a interchangeable sort of flat pack style battery on the back. This is a sealed unit. This can only be charged vis-a-vis the USB micro. I'm perfectly okay with that because, again, I didn't want to be bringing extra batteries anyways. It has a really nice sort of like a friction hinge, so it's not clicks, so you can basically fine tune it to exactly where you want. It's a 2-button up top. The 1 button will cycle through the power and function as a power on off. The other button will cycle between the main beam, the red and the white. And a combination with the strobes, I'm still not an expert at it, but compared to my old Storm 350, the Spot 400 is way simpler to use, and for that I am thankful. It has this neat sort of tapered headband, which I think is also partly where they're getting a little bit of the weight savings from. It uses a slightly smaller and thus lighter weight buckle. It's a nice low profile design. It's actually shallower than my old headlamp. So it is lighter in terms of the headlamp itself. It's lighter in terms of its overall kit. Again, me not needing to bring extra AAAs. It's smaller, brighter, it's all of the things, and I'm really enthusiastic about it. Again, if you think that AAAs are the way that you want to go, then they have a whole parallel line for you. One item though that I'm also really excited about is this. This is the new Black Diamond Flare. It weighs 27 grams with the batteries included. It uses 2 CR2032s, which are those flat sort of nickel sized batteries. You can get them, well, basically everywhere. Why did I switch to this? Well, I'm gonna back it up here for a second. When I had my Storm 350, my main big headlamp, I bought a Spotlight 200 for use in my emergency kit as a backup. I would bring my my Storm with me if I knew that I was going on an overnight. But I had that Spotlight 200 was still quite large and quite heavy for just an emergency headlamp, especially if I was going to bring my 350. What I immediately started doing was then pulling that 200 out of my first aid kit as a backup and using it as a primary, which meant my first aid kit was going from depleted when I was pulling it out to refreshed. If I went for an overnight and then maybe the week following, I just wanted to do a day hike. And so what I wanted to do is just simplify the range altogether. And 200 lumens is way more than you need for emergency situations. In fact, it was so much that I was hiking with it at night. So when I saw that Black Diamond came out with this flare, that's when I knew that I was going to change things up. 27 grams down from the Spotlight, which was, I think, around 80. So I reduced the weight by about 75%, which is fantastic. I also significantly reduced the size. I love what they've done here. So let's start at the front. So unlike the headlamps you're probably familiar with the buttons, this one uses a twist dial. On the top, there are the different settings that you can see. So the off position, a solid red, a red strobe, a solid white low, a solid white high, and an SOS function. And you can cycle through those by simply just turning the actual ring around this. Now, I kind of broke my own sort of philosophy because this headlamp is available in a gray as well as in a red, and typically red I associate with emergency items. I just like the look of this gray so much, I figured, okay, fine, maybe I'll cheat on my own philosophy for a little bit. It has a small little headband that sits across the brow, really quite comfortable. And then it's a elastic sort of shoelace style with a simple toggle. It is much, much, much smaller than most other standard headlamps. So here it is for a size comparison. It is much lighter, and 40 lumens, believe it or not, I was genuinely, I don't want to say worried, I had my reservations about it. I thought maybe 40 lumens would be sufficient just for that psychological benefit. If you got caught out in the woods overnight, 40 lumens might be able to light your sort of immediate vicinity. What I have discovered is in its highest setting, it's about the same as what you get out of your cell phone. Granted, in its highest setting, I believe you only get 4 hours of burn time. Yeah, that's correct, 4 hours of burn time. So, you know, maybe using that sparingly for tasks. I could actually hike with 40 lumens. I would be going at a slightly slower pace, you know, paying a little bit more attention to the shadows. But 40 lumens is sufficient for, I think, anything and everything you would need to do in an emergency situation, whether that's building a shelter, trying to prepare a fire, or if you're close enough, self-extricating. So it doesn't sound like a lot, and it isn't. Of course, keep in mind, if Black Diamond went with more lumens, which I wouldn't be upset if in the future they upgrade this to 50, but that would of course mean that that's going to deplete the batteries even that much more quicker. So I think they've done a fair job at trading off the number of lumens that you would need for this given purpose versus battery life. I believe on the lower setting you get 15 hours, that's correct, on the low setting. So 15 hours on low, theoretically you could run it from the time that it goes dark all the way into the morning when your rescuers are coming. I don't suggest that, but you theoretically could. So in my previous video where I broke down the contents of my first aid kit, at that time it weighed 325 grams. Now with the much lighter and much more compact flare, I'm weighing in at 271 grams, which is actually quite a noticeable difference. As well, you can see there's much more internal space. This really is a targeted device, I think, for first aid in emergencies. And I think it suits this first aid kit much better, and I have the peace of mind of just leaving it there. And when I know that I'm gonna go out and do these overnights, or that there's the possibility that I might get caught, then I'll reach for the much brighter, much more featured Spot 400R. Black Diamond Flare, 27 grams of emergency lighting, and Black Diamond Spot R400, for some reason 3 grams lighter than the simpler, less bright options, and internally rechargeable. I hope you found this video somewhat informative, and you've been able to sort of, weigh that, the pros and the cons with your own use case scenario. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. You take care. Bye for now.